68. The Dying State. Part 2. David Cannadine has written, "Power is like the wind. We cannot see it, but we feel its force. Ceremonial like the snow, an insubstantial pageant, soon melted into thin air. Power is manifested in visible men and orders, however, and it can be present either as brute and tyrannical force or as a religiously validated instrument present amongst men. In the latter sense, in antiquity, the king was seen as the guarantor of the divine order. Janet L. Nelson, in writing of the Carolingians, has said, "The ideology presented by historians of medieval political ideas has sometimes seemed divorced not only from the realities described by historians of medieval politics, but from the ideas of most of those involved in medieval governments. The divorce is an illusion, a trick of historiographical light. Nobles, clergy, and king inhabited one world. There was no power that was not religiously validated. In that very general sense, the Carolingian king was sacral, God-appointed, but the people and its leaders were also chosen by God. The king, like other Christians, was part of the church in the widest sense of that elastic term. King and people collaborated in the church's protection, the king leading rather than dominating. The people and the king were members of a common order. With Christianity, that common order of kings, lords, and people had more to it than a political structure linked to the gods. The Christian social order had a radically different strength, one without equal in other societies. Kings, prelates, barons, and people were all alike the recipients of God's sovereign grace. Their common bond was in Christ and His mercy." In the preface to a study of The Rise of French Liberal Thought, 1954, Kingsley Martin wrote, "The clue to the political thought of any period lies in the conflict between various views of human nature. Theories continually change, but the main division between authoritarians and libertarians remains the same at all periods. In the 18th century, church and states were founded on the belief that human nature was essentially bad and capable of regeneration only through the gift of grace and the exercise of absolute sovereignty. From the Renaissance onwards, that view was challenged by freethinkers who held that life was made to be enjoyed and that men needed not grace, but freedom to develop their faculties, to cultivate the arts, and to profit by the pleasures of society. The peculiar interest of the 18th century, however, lies in the growth and apparent triumph of a third view, which repudiated clerical discipline and transformed Renaissance hedonism. It substituted knowledge for grace as the means of salvation and held that the prospect of improving men in society could serve as an ideal sufficient to coordinate men's purposes and provide them with a criterion of right and wrong. These efforts to give men a secular religion, a religion which is the real basis of liberalism and socialism, which is its linear heir, is the theme of this book. In its early stages, especially in the United States, democracy flourished. The common school seemed to be the doorway into a great participatory freedom and prosperity. The substitution of knowledge for grace in time created a division. The people's resentment of experts and bureaucrats was an evidence that knowledge did not draw people together, but divided them. The theme of the mad scientist became a popular one, and of an elitist education out of control. In the ages of grace, emperors could be compelled to do public penance, facts which at times made their power palatable to their subjects. When the king was brought low because of his sin, he stood in the same need of grace as his humblest subject, and his public penance demonstrated that fact. The idea of professors and scientists bureaucrats and experts doing public penance is absurd because, in terms of their premise, their problem is not sin but insufficient knowledge or data. A secular doctrine of progress through scientific socialism has replaced the doctrines of grace and progress, and liberty, fraternity, and equality replace the gospel as man's hope of redemption. Now, however, progress is no longer an article of liberal faith, and, as a result, an erosion has set into the hopeful dreams of the French Revolution and its slogan. The religion of the Revolution was thus founded on the belief that all men and all societies were capable of improvement by deliberate and scientific adjustment of their environment. In the waning years of the 20th century, this faith is also waning, even as, in the late medieval eras, the Church's hold waned. A.G. Dickens wrote of the Reformation and pre-Reformation years. Amid all nations and social groups there flourished a host of irrational forces, a preoccupation with diabolic agencies, witchcraft and sortilege, a curious blend of eschatological expectancy with a dread of universal dissolution. These words can also serve as a description of the 20th century. The dread of universal dissolution is very much with us. Barraclough's comments about the late medieval papacy are particularly relevant. Corruption flourished. Nepotism of a particularly revolting kind was commonplace. Popes made cardinals of their illegitimate sons. Cynicism was widespread, and even priests like Giovanni Boccaccio told coarse tales about the Church. Barraclough observed, "It might be thought that Christendom would have revolted in scandal. What is astounding is that it did not, and the fact that it did not is the best evidence that people had, so to say, already written off the papacy. It no longer had any hold over men's minds, not even enough to provoke angry hostility." When the revolt came, it was the Holy Roman Emperor who resisted Luther. Again, it was the Emperor who insisted on the Council of Trent and the need for Catholic reform. From the Council of Constance in 1414 to 1418 to Loyola, the Church was increasingly peripheral to social order. The state was the formative power. Since World War II, the triumph of statist education has given way to confusion and rout. In 1950, only 6% of the school-aged children in the United States were in non-statist schools. By 1987, this number had risen to 35%, with a steadily accelerating increase of homeschooling as well as Christian schools. In the areas of charity, a growth of private activities was also in evidence. At the same time, state power was increasing, yet confidence in the state declining steadily. There is a curious and modern note in the last days of King Louis XI of France, 1423 to 1483. Philippe de Comines said of him that no man ever feared death so much as he, nor tried so hard to find remedy against it. He begged Comines and his servants never to mention the word death to him, for the word was too much for him. They should only suggest that he have himself shriven. When the death approached, Louis XI summoned holy men and women, but he asked neither for grace nor for salvation, merely for the prolongation of life. The modern state is dying. Its humanistic faith is collapsing. Science and education have not been substitutes for grace, and their efficacy and integrity is now questionable. The humanistic states, however, dream of a prolongation of life and power. In their pride and vain imagination, they see themselves like eternal Rome as life's necessary order. Power, like the wind, can die quickly